In Fear and Hunger 2, a gruesome battle royale designed by malevolent eldritch gods plays out in real time. Twistedly named the Festival of Termina, they watch as the unknowing doomed participants are pitted against one another, slowly losing their humanity to the moon god Rher's influence. At the heart of it all are 14 souls who have become the latest contestants of the festival. Among them, a child soldier escaping a life of war, a mage carrying the still living head of an ancient wizard, a doctor searching for answers to his late fiance's murder, some fleeing past crimes, others desperately seeking answers, and those simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of them forced to mercilessly slaughter one another, as in 3 days' time, only one of them can remain alive to become the champion of Termina, or be moonscorched into a terrible monster from their failure. You can choose from 8 of the 14 contestants to be the player character, with exclusive endings for being the last one alive, with the remaining 6 serving integral roles in the story. But surviving the Termina Festival may not be the mercy it seems. Daan the Doctor is easily the most tragic character in Fear and Hunger 2. We find his parents were members of the Bunny Mask cult, followers of the old god of love, Sylvian, who we see members of in the first Fear and Hunger. Due to this, they traveled all around Europa, but his parents chose the religion over caring for Daan, even attempting to evolve him in their twisted rituals, leading Daan to hate his childhood and disdain his caretakers. However, one day they didn't return from their ceremonies, having been overtaken by the ritual. Daan was left all alone at 13 and had to fend for himself. This eventually led him to catch the attention of the Baron, Einar von Dutch, where Daan met his daughter, Elise. Einar used to be a doctor himself and was fascinated by Daan's knowledge of Sylvian and trained him on medical practices in exchange for lessons on the old god. Daan was worried about the Baron's fascination with gods, but was finally happy to have a place where he belonged and soon became a couple with Elise. But his happiness wouldn't last long. The Great War was starting and Daan was drafted to the front line where he could choose to use his medical skills or become an infantryman. The war was gruesome and taxing, leaving more mental scars on Daan. His letters from home were the only thing that kept him going through the hardship, but one day, they stopped. When the war ended, he rushed home to see what could be the cause. What he found was his worst nightmare. The manor was dark and empty, the halls lifeless, except for the basement. Within, he found bloodied corpses and what seemed to be a ritual to an unknown god. The first was the body of Einar von Dutch, deceased from what seemed to be self-inflicted wounds, and in the main sacrificial circle lied Elise, his beloved, now gone forever. Daan tried any means to bring her back, even sacrificing his own body parts. Days of twisted methods were attempted, but nothing worked. The Baron's macabre fascination had taken the only semblance of family he had left. Devastated, Daan found notes speaking of a small town named Prehevil. It had some connection with the Baron's ritual. With his loved ones gone, maybe he could find some answers, and so Daan set out. During the game, Daan is social and curious as to what is happening, especially towards the Moonscorch villagers whose condition he has never witnessed. Daan also has a lighthearted side despite his tragic life. At Prehevil Bop, he will serve as the bartender, making multiple cocktails, and will even tell Marina she is unable to drink as she doesn't have her license. However, going to the White Mold apartments on day 2, we find Daan in the room with the sigil of sulfur, a sigil he recognizes all too well. It was the same one the Baron used, and while he can see it has some connection to the Termina Festival, his questions go unanswered. Even more heartbreaking, if you defeat Stitches first before Needles within the forest bunker and use medical diagnosis, Daan will have a horrifying discovery. Her face is that of his late Elise, but that couldn't be possible. Could it? If you then use medical diagnosis on Needles, we see he is without a doubt Baron Einar von Dutch. The ritual conducted by the Baron to Sulfur has resurrected them as malevolent sulfur cultists, using the festival as a means to shed blood and cause torment. Daan also doesn't have a typical Moonscorch form, but instead is possessed by Pocket Cat and becomes the next wearer of the feline mask. And this fate extends to his B ending. Daan never finds the answers he sought, and coming to Prehevil has only raised more. Additionally, Daan had partaken in bloodshed, even more so than the Baron, so what does that make him? With a weakened psyche, Daan feels Pocket Cat creeping up on him, and Daan weighs if he should take the cat up on his offer. He has nothing else. Maybe the masked figure could finally grant him some solace? Osa, the Yellow Mage, was born in the war-torn lands of Abyssonia, where ancestral spirits acted as gods. However, as great wars waged in northern Europa, it was only a matter of time before they came for Abyssonia, wanting to secure its strategic position and resources. Vowing not to die in a pointless war, Osa left his home and family at a young age with a heavy heart. Despite not being swayed by his emotional side, he came to the City of the Sun, Amon, where he studied spiritualism and religion, quickly becoming an apprentice. As Europa approached Abyssonian borders, Osa diligently continued his studies, learning of many different schools of spiritualism. But the more he learned, the more he saw the dull nature of religion being used to control the masses, and didn't want to serve someone else. He found a scroll detailing the Yellow Mages. Instead of dedicating their lives to worship, the gods existed for them. They saw chaos as a natural state of the world and sought to harness it. This led Osa to the eastern sanctuaries, but he found even there the people worshipped Almer. His travels weren't in vain, as he found a group of wandering Yellow Mages who accepted him in. It was only then Osa started on his true path. His growth seemed endless, and he met a mysterious man, Adil Azif, who called himself a wizard, and he was gathering a group to travel to the dungeons of fear and hunger. Unable to resist the ominous reputation of the dungeons, Osa joined the expedition. Many quit along the journey, as the country borders were hard to cross in times of war, and the closer they came to the dungeons, the more haunting their dreams became, leaving some too ill to travel. At the dungeons, an otherworldly fog hung over their camp as their compasses span uncontrollably, and monsters howled in the distance. Even Azif himself couldn't bear it, becoming sick from the dread, but Osa left him, and ventured into the cursed dungeons alone. The abandoned hall seemed empty at first, but still caused Osa's hair to stand on end as he entered. Pitch black inside, he explored by torchlight, soon hearing beastly growls in the distance. The rumors were true, this place was indeed cursed, but Osa couldn't turn back. A voice echoed in his head, beckoning him to go deeper. Most items had been looted, but he could still find a weapon and skin Bible among the wreckage, and he found what remained of a previous archaeological expedition, now wandering the dark halls as ghouls. He ventured deeper and deeper, passing through the torture chambers, prisons, and caverns, even coming face to face with the Crow Mauler if he isn't quick enough, before the quiet voice in his head became loud enough to hear. Below Ancient Rebel, he found a burnt and mummified head, the source of the voice, and what remained of Nasra, the floating head of a new god from the first Fear and Hunger. No records had mentioned him for 500 years, but Osa knew of the Great Wizard, as he was the creator of the Yellow Mages, and indeed his master. Still as foul-mouthed as ever, Nasra commands Osa to follow and help him seek revenge on a certain man. Despite Yellow Mages following their own path, Osa realizes he can learn a great deal from the talking head, and vows to be a servant for the time being. This leads Osa to the game's events, as Nasra, although being buried for centuries, is up to date with modern events, and knew the man he sought would be in Prehevil for an event of cosmic proportions, and the man he seeks is the Kaiser himself, Lagarde. Osa's intro is unique from the other characters, as you can choose to play it in a full text-based version instead of the typical choices option, allowing you to find additional and even secret items, but can also result in a game over if you choose wrong or fail a coin flip. During the events of the game, Osa will openly discuss magic and his origin as a Yellow Mage, but keeps his distance from the other contestants after the opening events, as he knows about the nature of the festival. Within the city, there are multiple places you can come across Osa meditating, and he will warn you to stay back, otherwise he will cast hurting and remove your limbs, just like the Yellow Mages of the first Fear and Hunger. However, Osa has a playful side. If you go into the confessional booth of the church, we find Osa on the other side, where he asks us to confess our sins. Doing so successfully raises your Almer affinity by 1, and Osa will laughingly reveal it was all a prank. Furthermore, you can recruit Osa by going to Tunnel 1, where we find him injured by one of August's magical arrows. He knows the telescopes hold strong meaning, but is unable to operate them, and by offering to help, he will come with us. His playthrough offers additional information about the game's world and characters, as Nasra will comment his thoughts to Osa, shedding light on quite a few of the game's mysteries. Even though you can confront the Kaiser with Nasra, he isn't able to get his revenge as the Kaiser flees, leading him to scorn his disciple. In Osa's B ending, he decides he has had enough of being bossed around by the gods, and tosses Nasra's withered head into a nearby lake. He then returns home to Abyssonia, finding the teachings of Almer now reign supreme, but Osa had learned much in his journeys. He aimed to overthrow the current teachings and become the new spiritual leader of the land. This time, the teachings would benefit his practitioners, but Osa would truly be the one at top of it all. Tanaka, the salaryman, comes from the eastern land of Edo, and he has found himself in Europa as an ambassador of his family's business, being sent by his father for meetings, one of which was to take place in Prehevil. At first, Tanaka seems like a timid city native, but he actually has the most drastic character development path of all the contestants, but few ever see this due to the many ways he can perish at the beginning. With the train abruptly stopped, he is late for his meeting and sets off on foot towards the city. However, he can quickly meet his end by either the woodsman if you jump into the well, as Tanaka will attempt to get help only to lose his head in the process, or by Needles, as if you go too far into Tunnel 7 before entering the city, he will become the clown's first victim of a painful death. And Needles seems particularly set on Tanaka, as if he survives, he will tell of how the clown is menacingly stalking him throughout the city. Avoiding both of these, we'll see Tanaka start to cling to Marcoh, and after being saved from Pav and getting the wheelchair for Olivia, Marcoh will start to teach Tanaka boxing, and he undergoes both a physical and mental transformation, becoming more confident and headstrong in his abilities, fitting as he possesses a latent soul. More so, upon witnessing Marcoh Moonscorch in the White Mold apartments, Tanaka has a complete change of character, resolving to end things once and for all, to climb the tower, to face Pergola himself, and put a stop to the festival. But there is one contestant more fearsome than even Tanaka. August the Hunter is the most mysterious and capable contestant, even being acknowledged by Nasra, who tells Osa to watch out for him, a warning proving later true. He possesses Oldegardian lineage, which he will open up to Abella about, but August and his ancestors lived nomadic lives, traveling around the continent, but he wants this hectic way of life to end with him, and his wife and 2 children await him in Valand. Despite his age, he is extremely agile, athletic, and knowledgeable, being able to easily jump the Lock City Gate and scale the buildings of Prehevil, as well as being able to easily dispatch Moonscorch with his bow. He keeps tabs on the other contestants in a journal that Karin can find, but he is also caring, as he will save the player from being crucified by the decrepit priest. We find August knows much more about what is going on in Prehevil. In fact, he is there to hunt a certain figure, the Kaiser. Knowing his true nature as Lagarde, the Yellow King of Madness, he is able to recount how he became a new god, as we find August is actually the descendant of Ragnvaldr from the first Fear and Hunger, having tasked his family with stopping Lagarde, as he knew he would one day reappear from the void back into the world. We see this further cemented as August will save the party from Moonless, who he tells is an old family friend of his. If you reach the White Bunker on the first day, August will confront the Kaiser, shooting him with 3 green magical arrows, the very same he used to shoot Osa in one of the tunnels, and telling the Yellow King he should recognize them, and this was a long time coming. Despite his sneak attack, August is effortlessly defeated by the Kaiser. While August won't Moonscorch, he can lose his sanity and join the Termina Festival, as if you witness Pav's encounter with the Kaiser at the Hollow Tower and complete Tanaka's full quest line, you can tell August about the encounter at the tower, and he will appear there on the 3rd night. However, he stands above a lifeless Tanaka, having shot him with his arrows, and wishes to shed blood, as the only way he will get his answers now is through becoming the champion of Termina. Pav, the Bremen lieutenant, is one of the most complicated characters, with his true motives being hidden until you activate special scenes through his questline. With Bremen being the aggravator in the Second Great War and being led by the Kaiser, Pav is distrusted by the other contestants, Karin and Marcoh in particular. He doesn't do himself any favors by his commanding and condescending demeanor, appearing outside Tunnel 7 and tasking the player with opening the locked gate to the city for him, and hinting he has plans to off them later once completed. If you don't intervene in his standoff with Tanaka and Marcoh, caused by Marcoh punching Pav, he will unemotionally shoot and kill the pair, although he reveals he doesn't want to start participating in the festival just yet before going on his way. His true reason for coming to Prehevil is revealed if you make it to the Hollow Tower on the morning of the 3rd day or earlier. The Kaiser will appear, with Pav ambushing him from behind, his pistol drawn, telling the Yellow King the bullet has his name on it. He's easily recognizing his lieutenant and calling him by his full name, Pavel Yudin. The Kaiser surmises that since Pav was recruited during the First Great War, that he is responsible for destroying Pav's hometown and killing his family in the process. Despite being held at gunpoint, the Kaiser warns Pav his revenge quest is a waste, and his seemingly evil deeds are actually for the good of mankind. Losing his temper, Pav shoots the Kaiser, but is easily subdued by a sword swipe, with his leader leaving him to bleed out. We have the option to save Pav and take him back to the train. With his life goal now failed, Pav has given up hope of being able to stop the Kaiser, believing he may truly be a god, as people say, after taking a bullet like it was nothing, and warns any attempts we may try against the Yellow King will be futile. Pav will ultimately perish by the night of the third day, either from his fight with the Kaiser or the wounds he sustained from them, and he is one of 2 characters to not have a Moonscorched form. Marina, the occultist, was born in Prehevil, the same city as the game's events. Her father is the dark priest Father Domek, and Marina was born a boy, thus destined to follow in Domek's footsteps and perform archaic and macabre blood rituals. However, Marina's mother did not want this life for her and decided to raise her as a girl instead. Her father always disliked and looked down upon Marina, even though she showed a great talent for occultism, eventually becoming recognized by the Ministry of Darkness within the Vatican, where she was given a scholarship to further her studies, leaving Prehevil behind. Marina's time at the Vatican was fruitful and allowed her to refine her occult abilities and affinity with the god of her choice. But one day, she received a letter from her estranged father letting her know of her mother's passing. The letter stood out as suspicious, as her father hadn't made any contact since she left Prehevil, and Domek seemed saddened by her mother's death, leading Marina to think he was involved in it being part of some blood ritual. Determined to find out what really happened, she leaves the Vatican to go back home, unaware of the chaos occurring in Prehevil. Throughout the game, Marina is stalked by a mysterious dark-haired girl named Samarie, who claims to know her from the Vatican. Dumbfounded, as she has never seen her before, Samarie flees before giving more details. We see Marina's love of studies, as she can be found in the bookstore, hiding away from the world. Learning she is going to the church. Heading there, we'll see Marina follow and join the party. Going to the church on the first day, we see Samarie and Marina's father enter an altercation, as Samarie tells him she is there for Marina. Domek showcases his disdain for Marina firsthand, saying she is dead to him. Revealing his daughter is actually in Prehevil, Samarie angers Father Domek, who grabs and slaps her, causing her to stab him before running off. Marina can then talk to her dying father, who says she wasn't supposed to come back, and the letter was meant to be the end before he passes away and melts into the floor. Within the rare dimension of the church's basement, Marina finds Samarie and a strange flesh pillar, revealed to be her father's true form from a twisted blood ritual. The dark-haired girl tells of how she knows Marina well, but Marina denies it, causing Samarie to go mad and Moonscorch into dysmorphia. After defeating her, Marina expresses her feelings of discontent towards her father, but below her words lies a layer of sadness. We find the third day of the festival is actually Marina's birthday, and can give her a number of different presents at Prehevil Bop, garnering different reactions for each one. In her ending for surviving the festival, Marina travels around before settling in Valand, as all of her prior connections to Prehevil were cut during the festival. She lived in the Red Lights district, as she could be among those who wouldn't judge her, and used her occult powers to make a living. Everything seems pretty nice for her, except for a strange dark-haired girl who keeps following her around. Samarie is a mysterious character who comes from the Vatican City and is innately gifted with strong magical abilities, a trait the Dark Priest of the Vatican took full advantage of and has left Samarie with lasting afflictions. She is extremely secretive, hiding in the back cabin of the train, but we learn Samarie is obsessed with Marina, following and even watching her while she sleeps. Her infatuation with Marina is what led her to confront and kill Marina's father, hoping the two could then be together. However, Marina has no idea who she is, let alone why she is undyingly obsessed over her. If encountered on the morning of day 1 within the church, you can find Samarie within the church's rare dimension, hysterical over having killed Father Domek, and after calming down, she will come back to the train. Here, she speaks about her regret of having to kill Marina's father, and reveals the truth about her past. She and a group of other magically gifted children were locked in the 9th circle of the Ministry of Darkness within the Vatican, a secret area area where the children were used to try and commune with the older gods, but at the expense of their bodies. Due to this, Samarie doesn't have long to live. It's never fully stated, but it appears Samarie was able to observe Marina while she was in the Vatican City from the Ninth Circle ritual. And if you have the mind read ability, you will see Samarie does as well, and she will tell Marina she saw her thoughts about her father, which is why she confronted him. Her observations led to obsession, and she was able to learn about Marina's life through her thoughts, and was able to somehow escape the Ministry of Darkness to follow Marina back home, as she knew it would be difficult for her. She also tells of how she is able to create an Almer blood portal, which is what she used to get to the church so fast, as she didn't want to venture into the city as Rher had tainted it. Samarie will ultimately Moonscorch, regardless if you help her or not, but in Marina's ending, she is followed by a mysterious girl resembling Samarie. Did she find a way to somehow revive, or is this a doppelganger that managed to make it out of the city? Olivia the botanist was born at the stroke of midnight on the last day of the month, alongside her twin sister Rayla, resulting in Olivia possessing a shadowed soul and her sister a radiant one. Her first memory was that of blue-nocted moths while sitting alone with her sister, a special moment as the two were seldom together and took differing paths in life as foreshadowed by their opposing soul types. Olivia's body was frail, whereas Rayla was sturdy and adventurous, leaving Olivia stuck indoors reading while her sister was out making friends. However, they found comfort in one another as their household was extremely religious and both wished to be free of its rigidity. Olivia found her escape in botany and the natural world, but Rayla, being gifted academically, found hers in science, specifically around engineering and new technology. And the sisters' mutual love of learning, albeit different subjects, was a warm space of connection between the two. However, catastrophe came during Olivia's high school years as a series of small strokes left her bedridden. Her parents decided to seek religious healers, reluctantly allowing real doctors to look at Olivia at Rayla's behest, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Even after long operations, Olivia lost the major functions of her legs and was wheelchair bound. Her world feeling even more unfair, she had to watch as the gap between her and Rayla grew even larger as she effortlessly moved through life. They both eventually escaped their parents' religious influence by going to the same university in Bremen, where Olivia continued her botanical studies, choosing her specialization, but had trouble socially. Rayla, on the other hand, succeeded in all social situations, even having a fling with one of the professors, and eventually, being seen as a genius in her field, was accepted to an exchange program with the Eastern Union. Olivia graduated and went to work at the largest greenhouse in Bremen, but still felt lesser than her sister, who was off having adventures after being hired to work in top-secret facilities all across Central Europa. The sisters exchanged letters, but Rayla never would say what she was working on. The letters abruptly stopped. 6 months later, news arrived that Rayla was accused of treason, and she had been held in an undisclosed prison for months. There was nothing Olivia could do. Feeling helpless, she searched for anything that could help free her sister, and one day, she learned her sister had been broken out of prison by the Nameless Liberty Underground, a secret group known as terrorists in Bremen. Olivia had heard that name before, years ago, from the professor Rayla had been secretly seeing. Digging deeper, Olivia tries to meet him, but found he had been executed some months prior, after also having been accused of treason. However, going through his belongings, she finds letters from Rayla describing cryptic writings about a cube and the Eastern Union wanting to replicate it, but have been unsuccessful. Her writings also detailed the operation in Prehevil the Kaiser was after, with Rayla's last words being that she needed to make it there in time. Without hesitating, Olivia left to find her sister. We actually see Rayla in the game's intro and drawing a protection circle on the train before we meet the janitor. Additionally, Rayla guides the player throughout the game, showing up near the telescopes as blue-nocted moths and in her ghostly visage. For most of the game, Olivia is contained to the train as she doesn't have a wheelchair, and one was to be waiting for her at the train station, but Marcoh and Tanaka can bring her one on the second day. Even when recruited, she stays reserved about her condition and purpose for being in Prehevil. We find what Rayla's involvement in Prehevil really is. She has become the vessel for the machine god logic within the White Bunker, having taken the place of the Kaiser. Her guidance throughout the game was to activate the Logic Project and bring humanity into a new age. Despite her new form, she recognizes Olivia, giving unique dialogue where she says she has found a way they can be together forever before enveloping her in the warmth of the green hue. Surviving the Termina Festival, Olivia realizes after years of of therapy that it was a constructive experience for her, and she now realizes her true potential. Even being wheelchair-bound, she managed to become the champion of Termina. As time went on, she started to feel her sister's presence, and knew she was accompanying her, even though Olivia never learned what happened to Rayla. With newfound confidence, she traveled to far-off locations to study various fauna and flora. Nature took care of her in her travels. She didn't have to worry about her body's limitations. For the first time in her life, Olivia finally felt free. Levi, the ex-soldier, was actually born in the city of Prehevil, but his upbringing was as chaotic and damaging as the wars he was forced to fight in. His father was an alcoholic and abusive towards his mother for as long as he could remember, leaving him without many pleasant memories of his childhood. Things got even worse one night, as a heated argument between Levi's parents became more violent than usual. Rushing to Levi's room, his mother tried to escape and hold the door shut, but both her and Levi were unsuccessful, and his mother was killed by the drunkard's rage. Without a suitable guardian, Levi was sent to Prehevil Orphanage, where an even more grim fate awaited. Not only were the staff abusive to children, there were rumors of some orphans disappearing without a trace. Levi wished to leave the orphanage behind, and his wish was granted before long. With the Second Great War beginning, any able-bodied citizen was forced to fight, and Levi was dragged into war at only 13. While he excelled on the battlefield, the horrible things he witnessed left irreparable scars on his young mind, and to make matters worse, even younger kids than he were drafted. Levi soon found himself in charge of a group of child soldiers, and they were given a suicide mission to complete. However, he managed to survive, but was left psychologically broken from the death and carnage, and so turned to opioids to dull the unending pain, becoming addicted in the process. Unable to stand war any longer, he deserted the army, knowing full well he would be severely punished if caught, and made his way back to Prehevil, as he didn't know where else to go. During the Termina Festival, we see Levi's PTSD and withdrawal firsthand, as he will run when first seeing the player and hides in the restaurant. Giving him heroin will allow him to join the party, where he quickly becomes debilitated from withdrawal. If left alone, he becomes a target of the sadistic Caligura, who will taunt and then kill Levi if we don't interfere. Saving Levi will cause him to flee to the orphanage, where a standoff begins, believing the player wanting to kill him for the festival, but he can be talked down, and we see Levi break from the pressure and stress he has encountered thus far. Surviving the events of the game, Levi leaves both Prehevil and his past behind, finally feeling a sense of freedom, but it doesn't last long. He moves from one place to another, trying to keep the misery he feels at bay. He stays in a new city until the nightmares from Prehevil start, then travels again, hoping one day he can get far enough away that his past couldn't stalk him, or maybe it would eventually catch him. Karin the journalist was born into the aristocratic Sauer family in the Bremen Empire. Although her parents were nobles, they were seen as outsiders due to having risen to power through their own path and didn't have ties to the pure-blooded high society of Bremen. Karin herself was always extremely curious, falling into mischief and needing to be monitored by her older siblings and nanny. With her parents occupied by noble duties, her nursemaid Dahlia, who originated from the Eastern sanctuaries, raised her. Despite her seeming nice, there was always something off about her, and this hunch would turn out to be horribly correct. When tensions began to boil in Bremen, it became tense for Karin's family, as they didn't have a proper lineage to back them up, and would be the first to be sold out to please the populace. One night, this led to an angry mob storming their manor. In a rush, Karin's parents gave her to Dahlia, and they fled the country for safety until things settled down. However, this was Dahlia's story, and Karin couldn't remember her consulting her parents before leaving. The duo traveled to Jataya, the capital of the Eastern Sanctuaries, which had newly become the Eastern Union. It was all a shock to young Karin, and in her panic, she attempts to flee from Dahlia, but inevitably comes back to her. They found nice lodging, with Dahlia claiming her parents were sending money to look after her, and Karin learned many things about the way of the world and politics by growing up in this city. One day, she became involved in a violent protest with local authorities, leading to Karin being hurt and ending up in a hospital. She awoke to find embassy members waiting, her having been noticed on television during the protests, and she was sent back on the first flight to Bremen. At home, she finds her father had died when rioters burned down their family manor, and her mother had since remarried, and the truth was finally revealed. Dahlia had kidnapped Karin years ago, and the money she had been living off of was actually ransom money she demanded from Karin's mother and stepfather. Karin's suspicion was right all along, and drove her to become a journalist to discover what was really going on in Bremen, going on to even even cover wars. With the mysterious Kaiser rising to power from nowhere, she knew there had to be more to the story, especially since the Kaiser was involved in the uprising that had killed her father. Digging deeper, she found connections to a secret society known as the New Gods, and other members of global politics were also linked to the shady group. Finding the Kaiser had occupied Prehevil after making a truce with the Eastern Empire, she knew the small city held an enormous truth and set out to Prehevil to discover it. During the festival, Karin searches for a logical explanation of what is happening to the residents of the city, insisting the Moonscorch villagers must be affected by some type of nuclear radiation. She is quick to argue with other characters, especially Daan, as he has different ideas of what could be causing the illness. Karin even becomes violently suspicious of August, having found a secret journal of his where he has been taking notes on the other contestants, culminating in a potentially deadly duel between the two. Surviving the festival, Karin is perplexed by what she has witnessed, making much of her life feel meaningless in comparison to the unknowable truths the world hides. Worst of all, even if she tried to tell others what happened, they would think her crazy and dismiss it entirely. Despite this, she knew the stories of the Kaiser and New Gods were real. Now, she only needed to convince others to believe this revelation. Karin dedicated herself to finding the truth, going deeper and deeper, even if it meant her own sanity may not be able to take it. Marcoh the boxer grew up in the streets of the Vatican City, having been orphaned at age 10, and he had to work in the criminal underworld to try and make a living for himself and his younger sister. It was difficult at first, but as he grew up, Marcoh was easily able to defeat the other street kids that once bullied him. His stature and prowess caught the gaze of street gangs, who wanted him as hired muscle, but he refused, even if it meant he had to fight. So he instead decided to make fighting his job. Honing his skills and training in boxing, his diligence bore fruit as he started to gain a reputation, quickly moving to underground boxing rings where more money could be made. At the same time, his sister started to become admired by many, but Marcoh kept a protective eye on her. However, she became close with the famous mobster Ricardo Accardo, the heir to the Accardo sect of the family, an organized crime group within the Vatican City who had deep ties to the church. Ricardo seemed nice enough and soon tried to recruit Marcoh into the family, which he declined, but Accardo decided to help him further train his boxing skills instead. Marcoh was hesitant, not wanting to be dragged into mob life, but his sister insisted, and Marcoh became even more formidable. Ricardo was able to enter Marcoh into many boxing matches, which he easily won. The three spent much time together, and before Marcoh realized, he'd been dragged into the criminal world, and Ricardo finally showed his true twisted intentions. He set up a match against a former member of the family, and Marcoh was to kill him in the ring. Trying to get out of it, Ricardo had his sister, and she would suffer if he didn't comply. Forced into a corner, Marcoh went into the match and easily knocked out his opponent, but it wasn't enough. Ricardo grimly smiled upon him as Marcoh hit his unconscious target over and over until he stopped breathing. Marcoh had killed a man. He was absolutely devastated, but pushed all of his guilt down deep in order to protect his sister, and Ricardo's request didn't end there. He had many more dirty tasks for Marcoh, all with the condition he do as he told, or his sister would be held responsible. Marcoh could take this no longer, and so went to confront Accardo and end things once and for all, or attempts to flee in the night with his sister. Regardless of his choice, he finds his sister missing, and it ends with a violent meeting at Ricardo's club. Once close enough to the mobster, Marcoh grabs him by the throat, slamming him repeatedly into the floor until he stops moving altogether, then throws the body over a railing to the floor below, watching as Ricardo lands head first into the ground. There had been multiple witnesses, and both the family and local law would be after Marcoh. Planning to run, he receives a call from his sister and finds she had been sent to Ricardo's summer home in Valland. Quickly explaining what happened, the pair plan to meet in Rondon, and Marcoh hops on the first train leaving the city, which is headed to a small bohemian town called Prehevil. During the game's events, Marcoh is caring and kind to others, helping Olivia to find a wheelchair and training Tanaka in boxing to help build his confidence. He also shows a hate for Bremen soldiers, as he will punch Pav unprompted, leading to a deadly standoff. However, the guilt from having killed others weighs heavy on Marcoh's soul, and ultimately leads to him moonscorching, his giant form based on the violent, raging brute he feels himself to be. Surviving the festival of Termina, Marcoh meets his sister in Rondon, but what he had experienced ate at him every night, as he was unable to tell anyone what happened. He saw people going about their lives, not knowing what evils dwelled in the shadows of the world. world, but it was better they not know of the cosmic horrors. Instead of focusing on the negative, Marcoh resolved to help prepare others for the cruel nature of the universe, starting a boxing gym. Even though he had taken lives, he could give back and save others through training them, and this helped to alleviate some of his crushing inner guilt. Caligura, the mobster, is by far the most evil and vile contestant in the game, being the only one that will attack and kill others unprompted. He comes from the Vatican City, just like Marcoh, and is a captain in a rival crime group of the family. His cruel and sadistic methods have earned him the moniker Count Dracul among fellow mobsters, and Marcoh easily recognizes him from the tales. His exact reasons for being in Prehevil are unknown, but he accuses Marcoh of being sent to kill him, indicating he must have done something to anger the family and is now on the run. We first see Caligura on the train if you don't pick up the map on the bench. He shows his ill temper, angrily pushing the character aside and storming out towards the city. He will ambush both Abella and Marcoh if you sleep in certain beds, attempting to violently assault Abella if you sleep in the mayor's manor, and interrogating Marcoh upon finding him sleeping. He can also be found harassing Levi within the city, where he will bash his head in if not saved, and a similar confrontation will occur with Henryk near the train if he is rescued. Abella the mechanic grew up in the northern land of Oldegard, which had seen many troubles from the First Great War. Despite this, Abella's childhood was peaceful as she spent her time with both parents and many siblings. Still rebuilding from the previous worldwide conflict, talk began of a second Great War brewing, which drove Abella to pick up mechanics and electronics to help her homeland. Always wanting to help and care for those around her, she was frustrated she couldn't do more as her countrymen were sent to battle, but her role as mechanic soon became invaluable as most of the men were off fighting and dying. Abella shouldered the immense responsibility, working long hours to support others. One rainy night, she came across a foreign man in an alleyway. He quickly collapsed, and she found he had been shot in the stomach. The stranger was from the kingdom of Rondon. Treating the mysterious man's wounds, he slowly recovered and told Abella of his true purpose in Oldegard. He was part of the Nameless Liberty Underground, or NLU, an underground resistance group. They had formed after the First Great War and were working to subvert both the Bremen Empire and Eastern Union. The man had valuable documents that needed to be taken to Rondon, and Abella agrees to do so in his stead. Arriving in the new city, she finds the meeting point and is asked to join the NLU. Their numbers are running low, and Abella's mechanic skills are invaluable to their cause. The Nameless Liberty Underground soon uncovers a horrific secret. Bremen had occupied a town in Bohemia for an unknown malevolent project, and the NLU members who had been sent to Prehevil, the capital of Bohemia, have lost all contact. Not being able to wait around, Abella sets off to Prehevil to find out what was going on and to seek support from the leader of the Bohemian branch of the NLU. During the festival, Abella displays her caring side, aiming to fix the train after it stops, and is one of the first characters to discover the tunnels under Prehevil. Taking her to Prehevil Bop and discovering the speakeasy below, she confirms it's a hideout for the NLU, although she doesn't quite understand what their markings of the tunnels mean. Surviving the events in Prehevil, Abella is haunted and unable to sleep from what she has learned. Eldritch beings, unspeakable monsters, and a malevolent moon god hanging in the darkness of the night. The void above her was taunting endlessly, a constant reminder of just how small humans truly are in the grand scheme. Her insomnia started to drive her mad, but an answer had to be out there. Rher had paid her a short visit, so she vowed she would return the favor to find her answers. Taking on top space technology positions, Abella worked tirelessly, and after a decade, she was ready to launch people at the moon. She would get her chance to see the moon god again, not through blood magic, but through science and knowledge. However, whether the pursuit is a good idea or not has yet to be seen. Henryk the chef comes from the kingdom of Rondon and is quite possibly the most plain contestant, with even Nostra commenting he has no remarkable qualities whatsoever. Despite this, Henryk is secretive of his past when asked at the train. In order to learn more, he must save him from the mayor's manor, where he is caught in a trance. This is done by finding the food storage in the basement, where Henryk becomes valuable as he will stay at the train and make food that can heal your party's hunger level, as well as gifting the player the sewer keys to enter the city. Failing to break his trance, or recruiting Abella causes the chef to Moonscorch into the Gentleman, where he takes over as Prehevil's mayor. Interestingly, Henryk is the most lucid Moonscorched, being able to have a full conversation and even gifting the player one of the keys needed to enter Prehevil. However, he refuses to talk about family at the table and will easily become hostile if insulted or if you support the Bremen army. He will even kidnap Marina, holding her within the mayor's room until you break her out. Henryk shows he isn't afraid of confrontation, as he will stand up to Caligura at the lake shore, brandishing his kitchen knife. Even though things won't work out for him on his own, we can save Henryk and tell him about the restaurant, cafe, or Prehevil Bop in the city, which he will travel to and start cooking. At these locations, he will reveal he left his family years ago to try and make it as a star or artist, and even tried to be a bartender where he had a fling with a pianist, but failed at everything and so returned home to start working at the family tavern. Here, he finally found success and made a name for himself as a chef, deciding to travel around the continent to find inspiration, ultimately leading him to Prehevil for the game's events. However, if you leave Henryk at Prehevil Bop going into the third day, you will awake to find a tragic scene as he has poisoned the food, and all characters you have brought there will be dead, as Henryk has Moonscorched into the Gentleman. The final character is the literal goat, Black Kalev. While not a direct contestant in the festival, he has deep ties to the cult behind Termina, and he is found outside the woodsman's shack. From bloody writings in the basement and notes found around the house, we learn the goat has laid with the woodsman's wife, leading the woodsman to lock her in the basement, claiming Kalev has taken everything from him. However, Black Kalev's true identity and backstory are much more insidious, as drawing the symbol of Rher in the basement allows us to meet the mysterious Man in Black, the true shape of Kalev, who will join you in goat form as long as you agree with him in dialogue options. While in the other rare dimensions, you can carve the clay pillars into shapes of yourself, and doing so 12 times with Kalev in your party will cause the Man in Black to reappear. He sheds light on his past. He was once a follower of Almer, but the Ascended One carved away his subconsciousness to rid himself of imperfection, and it was this castaway part of Almer that became Sulfur, who it seems the Man in Black now follows. Black Kalev's name and appearance are based on Black Phillip from the movie The Witch, who was revealed to be Satan hiding as a goat. Very fitting, as the Man in Black is a follower of Ehrenhunger's satanic figure. I want to give a special shout out to the OmniWorld channel members for their support of the channel. All OmniWorld channel members will get exclusive early access to new videos and determine which lore videos we will create in the future, as well as what games I will play in the live streams.